Deep in tropical forests, there is a fungus that can control the mind of its victim. It does not hunt. It does not chase. Instead, it waits. Once it infects its host, escape becomes impossible. And what happens next looks like something taken straight out of a horror story. But this is not fiction. This is real, and it is the organism that inspired the world of The Last of Us.
I just want some simple gear enough to set me on my way.
I reckon it's got something to do with that girl.
It's got everything to do with that little girl.
If you enjoy discovering the darkest and strangest truths hidden in our world, subscribe to Dark Origins, because some of the most disturbing stories on Earth are not myths, they are science. The organism is called Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. Scientists often refer to it as the zombie ant fungus, because once it infects an ant, the insect slowly loses control of its own body and becomes something closer to a puppet. This fungus belongs to a large group of parasitic fungi known as Cordyceps. For millions of years, these fungi have evolved one terrifying survival strategy. They infect insects, take control of their bodies, and use them to spread. The infection begins with microscopic spores floating through the humid air of tropical forests. These spores eventually land on an unlucky ant. Once attached, the spores begin to grow. Tiny filaments called hyphae penetrate the ant's outer skeleton and enter its body. At first, nothing unusual appears to happen. The infected ant continues working with its colony. It follows pheromone trails, carries food, and behaves exactly like every other ant. But inside its body, the fungus is building a network, a biological system that begins interfering with the ant's muscles and nervous signals. Scientists once believed the fungus completely controlled the ant's brain. But research later revealed something even stranger. The fungus mostly avoids the brain. Instead, it spreads throughout the body, surrounding muscle fibers. From there, it releases chemicals that manipulate the ant's behavior. It is not exactly mind control. It is more like biological hacking. Gradually, the ant begins behaving strangely. It leaves the safety of its colony. It begins wandering alone through the forest. This behavior is extremely dangerous for ants, which normally rely on group cooperation to survive. But the infected ant keeps moving, climbing plants, higher and higher, until it reaches a very specific height above the forest floor. Scientists have discovered that infected ants almost always stop at nearly the same height and location, usually on the underside of a leaf, in an environment with the perfect humidity and temperature for fungal growth. This is not a coincidence. The fungus is positioning its host exactly where it needs it. Then comes the final stage. The ant bites down onto the leaf with incredible force. Its jaws clamp shut and lock permanently. Researchers call this moment the death grip. Once the ant bites down, it will never move again. Soon after, the insect dies. But this is only the beginning of the fungus's plan. Over the next several days, the fungus continues growing inside the ant's corpse, consuming its tissues, replacing parts of the body, until finally, something emerges. A long, thin stalk pushes outward from the ant's head, breaking through the exoskeleton, growing upward into the open air. At the tip of this stalk, a structure begins forming. The structure produces thousands of new spores. Eventually, these spores are released. They fall from the leaf like invisible dust, drifting down onto the forest floor below, waiting for other ants to pass underneath. And when one does, the cycle begins again. Entire graveyards of infected ants have been discovered in tropical forests. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of ants, all attached to leaves in the same deadly position. Each one a victim of the same parasite. Each one turned into a tool for the fungus's survival. This disturbing natural process is what inspired the infection seen in The Last of Us. However, there is an important difference. In nature, this fungus infects insects, not humans. Human bodies are far too warm for this organism to survive. Most Cordyceps fungi thrive at temperatures around 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. The human body averages around 37 degrees. For these fungi, that temperature is simply too high. Our immune system also provides another powerful defense, but the idea behind the story is not completely impossible. because nature already contains many parasites capable of manipulating behavior. For example, there's a parasitic worm that infects crickets.
Gross! I just accidentally squished this cricket, and look at this parasite worm that is wiggling out of its body. That thing was living in that cricket. I don't know if I saved him or made it worse, but I'm gonna go get the torch. Come on, buddy, you got this. Oh, eat him. Bite him.
Once infected, the worm slowly alters the cricket's behavior, eventually forcing it to jump into water. Crickets normally avoid water at all costs, but the infected insect becomes strangely attracted to it. The moment the cricket enters the water, the worm emerges and swims away. Another example exists in the ocean. A parasite known as Cypothoa exigua infects fish. It enters through the gills and attaches itself to the fish's tongue. Then it slowly destroys the tongue and replaces it. The parasite becomes the fish's new tongue and lives inside its mouth.
Oh, look. It's like trying to come out.
Straight out of the Predator movie, isn't it?
Yeah, look. Scary, right?
Alien. Almost looks as handsome as you, Steve.
Nature, it seems, is filled with organisms that can manipulate other creatures in disturbing ways. The zombie ant fungus is simply one of the most extreme examples. For millions of years, evolution has been experimenting with survival strategies, and sometimes those strategies look like something out of a nightmare. So while a human version of this infection does not exist today, the idea itself did not come from science fiction. It came from reality. From a tiny fungus hidden deep in the forests of our planet. A fungus that turns living creatures into tools. A parasite that controls behavior. And a reminder that some of the most terrifying things in the world are already happening around us. Right now, unseen, silent, and completely real.